Now, Dr. Ed Group joins us. Great patriot, former Army Special Forces. Doesn't like me saying that, but it's just interesting. He's such a nice guy and one of the top product developers in the country. We're so blessed he's developed 3 products for us, but that's not why he's overall here today. But then we fund ourselves with Super Male Vitality, Survival Shield, Fluoride Shield, and the rest of it at InfoWarsLife.com. We're going to break in a few minutes, and I'm going to give you the floor when we come back because you want to get into the psychological warfare takeover today and the current DSM that lists not trusting the government as a mental illness. I mean, this is literally the Soviet Union. But what do you make of what they're doing with these active shooter drills?
Exactly what you're talking about. I mean, they're just trying to instill fear into the public. They're trying to manipulate the public. They're trying to control the public. And it's exactly what I wanted to talk about today, because if you look back at the history, there is an agenda going on. I mean, we talk about it a lot. And one thing that we haven't got into detail about is the agenda to create mental illness through fear tactics and everything else, to classify everybody as having a mental disorder. And there's a complete agenda that's been put into place since the late 1800s that's continuing today. And that's something that everybody needs to know about, the psychotropic drugs that are being used, which are mind-altering drugs, anything from antidepressants to the stimulants, the Adderall, all this other stuff.
And they won't tell you St. John's wort in double-blind studies has been proven to be better than psychotropics. They won't tell you can get natural plant-derived lithium that'll settle anybody down. They just don't tell you all the natural stuff's there.
No, by design, they want every single person classified as a mental illness, and that's why the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual that psychiatry has created, there's no history of any scientific studies that can actually verify a mental illness. You can, like a cancer cell, you can look at it under a microscope and say, that's a cancer cell. Okay, if I put this substance in there, I can see it killing the cancer cell. But there's no statistical evidence or any scientific evidence that can justify any mental illness that people are suffering from today. And it's
voodoo. Most people, it turns out, correct me if I'm wrong, who end up having classical schizophrenia, they don't tell them it's heavy metal toxicity. Speaking of drugging the population, mom who drove kids into the ocean, another victim of antidepressants. It turns out she was on them. Turned out Adam Lanza was on them. 99% of the time, literally, I've talked to cops. They pull up some woman's chopped their baby up. They go look in the medicine cabinet, and there's the serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Just absolutely amazing. That's up on Infowars.com. That's exactly what you were just talking about, Dr. Group.
It's becoming such a huge problem all over the world that the antidepressants and the stimulants are becoming so heavy in the water supply now that even if you're not on antidepressants and you drink the water over in Europe, a gallon of water equals the equivalent of 1 Prozac. I mean, this is the problem that we're dealing with right now is this was all done by design to dumb down the population, to addict the population, and no mental illness was ever scientifically proven. If you trace it back, psychiatrists, first of all, weren't even really doctors a long time ago. They were just caretakers of the mentally ill. Over a period of time, they started creating all these mental illnesses, supposedly, so they could team up with the pharmaceutical companies and create the first diagnostic and statistical manual, which actually outlines mental illnesses, and then create drugs to be able to put people on.
And I've got to interrupt you because they read my mind, and I was going to interrupt, and I controlled myself and didn't. Fish are becoming killers, ABC News, minnows because of it, just like the kids. And the fish are also committing suicide, swimming right up to birds, so are shrimp. You put women on these drugs, it makes them nymphomaniacs. It takes away the inhibition. It's absolutely, and it hurts your brain, it hurts your heart. Go ahead.
All of the shooters that have shot people, they're all on some sort of antidepressants.
The insert says it. The insert says it.
Absolutely. Suicide. I mean, look at the military. 716 people out of every 100,000 on antidepressants are committing suicide. There's more soldiers in the military committing suicide than dying of actual war itself. These children all over the nation that are committing suicide, even as young as 5 years old, the children that are in state custody foster care programs, over 90% of them are on antipsychotic drugs. And usually that's not, you know, they're being screened. And if you can screen, there's no testing to determine if somebody should be on these medications. It's not like you can take a blood test, a hair test, a urine test, and say, okay, you have a chemical imbalance.
And they're in the psychotropic hallucinogen family.
Yes, I mean, a psychotropic drug would be an antidepressant or a stimulant or anything that's a psychotropic is just mind-altering. So basically, they're altering your mind. Now, here's how this factors into the whole Obamacare and everything else. If you're classified as having a mental illness, then they can strip all your rights away from you. And that's actually happened to individuals, too, that had a diagnosis of a mental illness. They weren't even allowed to vote. They weren't allowed to see their children. They lost all their money. So technically, the government can strip all your rights from you if you're classified with a mental illness. So another reason why they want to push this on people and push it on kids is so that everybody is labeled with mental illness. Now, by the time a child is 18, they've gone through at least 12 mental illness screens in school. They have what's called the teen screen going on right now all across the nation where...
And they ask, are you anxious at age 11?
Yes.
Do you ever have anxiety? Do you ever cry? Well, you need to be on psychotropics, which is part of the New Freedom Initiative. The goal is to put half the kids on the drugs.
9 out of 10 kids are prescribed a drug after a teen screen right now. 84% of the kids that took the test were also falsely labeled as depressed. How is that going to affect them later on in life? I mean, when you got all these kids, and it's not...
This is how they get rid of their rights. It's the new slavery.
Well, right, because, people are easily controllable whenever they're, not only that, like what you said, they're not addressing the root cause of the problem.
Those numbers are incredible.
These numbers are incredible. I've got 100 million people worldwide on drugs, right, on psychiatric drugs. 70% of prescribed psychotropic drugs are by general physicians now. So they've even moved away from the fact that you have to go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. You can just go to your doctor. And what they've done through all the advertising in the media, through, are you feeling lonely? Are you feeling depressed? Ask your doctor about Zoloft. So basically, the individual people now they're targeting are going to their doctor saying, doctor, I saw this commercial and I want Zoloft or I want Paxil.
Exactly. They don't say you're depressed because you're not getting sunlight, need to be out. Go out and play some sports. Stop watching television. Start eating healthy. You're literally killing yourself. No, the answer is call a doctor and we'll give you a chemical weapon in the hallucinogen class that literally eats your brain cells. But it'll feel so good. They're not discussing all the real chemical imbalance, Prozac-type drugs in the water, estrogen mimickers in the water, in the plastics, in the printer ink, just in everything. And that's why every metric shows we are a diseased population. Please continue.
Well, yeah, create the disease by poisoning the air, the food, and the water, spraying pesticides, spraying heavy metals everywhere. That's what causes the real chemical imbalance. If you get to the root cause of the things, which is what we should be looking at, it's not that you have chemical imbalances and you need antidepressants and you need antipsychotic drugs. It's clean your life up and avoid drinking the toxic water and the toxic eating the toxic food and the preservatives, and avoid putting all those toxins in your system, and clean your brain and clean your bloodstream, and then you won't have all these fits of, rage or these depressive activities or anything else that they're claiming as mental disorders, which they cannot prove to begin.
And they're claiming normal human activity is mental illness now to expand their market and their social control, just like the Soviet Union used psychiatry and psychology as a tyranny. And I'm not saying everybody in it's bad. There's a lot of good people in it. It's just that the main driving force behind it is predatory. I mean, 50, 60 years ago, they still went around, and if your kid was depressed, they'd stick an ice pick into their eye, behind their eye, and give them a lobotomy. And sure, Junior never complained again. He never talked again. So it's just incredibly oppressive what's going on. And now, under the DSM, they've got all these new disorders where not liking authority, not trusting the system is mentally ill.
374 different mental disorders right now in the DSM, and in the 1930s, when the DSM started, it was only 34 mental disorders. So it's become a huge problem, and what's even scarier is the fact that they just came out with a DSM 0 to 3, which means they're from age 0 to 3, they're diagnosing, and I think there's like 12 or 15 mental illnesses between the age of 0 to 3.
And they're teaching moms on the hospital shows and stuff that it's like getting your kid a new suit of clothes or new shoes. It's fun to get a designation. It's fun to say something's wrong with your kids, and then like Munchausen by proxy, the moms then take them into the system and get them on the drugs or get them in the counseling, and then they're now heroes because they've got a special needs child who wasn't special needs but will be once the mental health system's done with them.
Well, first of all, they vaccinate the kid, which is going to cause all kinds of problems in the system, and then they feed them soy formulas and everything else, and they put all these toxins and chemicals in the babies, and then the babies have excessive crying or rashes or showing signs of excessive sleep or something like that they can label as a mental illness and put children on antipsychotics.
Yeah, they get stomach aches when you feed them formula that's 70% sugar. I mean, when you read a formula deal, the high fructose corn syrup, all of it, and it's like a conspiracy theory that women are supposed to nurse babies.
Right. It is a conspiracy theory. I mean, the sad news is if you're labeled with a mental illness from the time you're 2 years old, and that stays with you forever in your entire life. And it's not like you can get off of these drugs. It takes a year to wean somebody off an antidepressant or even a stimulant. Like
I know somebody that's been on Paxil for 15 years, and it's ruined their life. In their words, to many extent, it's given them a disease where their skin's totally white, the same disease Michael Jackson had. They've got an autoimmune issue now, and the doctors admit it's the Paxil. Didn't tell them when they went on it. You said it would take a year. How would you get them off?
Well, first of all, each individual person has to be evaluated, separately.
Sure, you can't diagnose them, but what would you do on average?
Well, you have to do what's called time-contingent detoxification, which is slowly reduce their dose over a period of a year. And at the same time, you want to give them natural substances like Tibetan rhodiola or lithium orotate or something that's going to naturally work with their serotonin receptors in their head so they have an easy way of getting off. And at the same time, you're going to be educating that individual on what are the things they need to avoid. For example, fluoride. Fluoride is going to cause major problems in the brain, in the thyroid gland. Putting them on iodine, detoxifying their body, because most people that are on psychotropic drugs are not just on one. They start with one, and then they have problems sleeping or something, and then they get put on sleep medications. Usually they're on 6 to 9 different medications because one thing causes side effects, which leads to another thing, which leads to another.
I saw that the average foster child is on 7 drugs. 7 different psychological drugs.
That's right. And, suicidal thoughts, aggressiveness, non-motivation. I mean, looking at society and looking at just trying to find somebody to work these days is so hard to get a good employee because everybody you interview, they're really not motivated to work anymore. And so this is affecting society as a whole because we don't have intelligent people and we don't have people that are working and people are losing their jobs actually. The auto accidents that are happening, people driving into the water, small children. I mean, there's a whole list of children now that you can pull up online that committed suicide. These are healthy children, supposedly. They're 7 years old. They're getting these screens in schools. They're sent to their psychiatrist saying they're hyperactive or whatever. They're put on, they ask them if they're happy in school. They say no. They're put on antidepressants, and within 7 days, the mom finds them hung and they're dead in their closet. I mean, and this is a serious...
And the insert says it does it.
And the insert actually says it's done it. Now, there's not one single case that's ever been documented of depression or ADD or ADHD or any of the 374 mental disorders in the DSM that's been cured, that's documented to be cured after all these years on antipsychotic drugs. Not one.
Introducing Pro One. All of your filtration in one system, portable, on the go. No more do you have 2 or 3 filters to just reduce sodium fluoride. You have a system that cuts out the sodium fluoride and up to 95% of hydrofluorosilicic acid. Advanced manufacturing technology combines silver-impregnated white ceramic with new Aquamedics advanced media for removal of fluoride and other heavy metals, all in one filter element. It is the only one that does it, and out of the gate, we have it discounted at 10% off with promo code WATER. This is the only system that in one unit helps reduce or remove pesticides, herbicides, chloramines, ammonia, and chlorine, hydrofluorosilicic acid, the most common form of fluoride not covered by other fluoride filter brands, and sodium hexafluorosilicate. Get your Pro Pure with the new Pro One filter today at InfoWarsStore.com or by calling 888-253-3139.